Oh, yeah, it's about that time. Off the Grid, episode 2 coming at y'all. And like I've said it before, man, y'all have heard me talk football on Gridiron Nation. Well, now it's time to go off the grid, and I got a very special guest up in the place today. Yeah, very special guest indeed, y'all. Welcome to Off the Grid. Let's get it popping, baby.
Now we can all get down, put your drink in the air. Fellas happy with shot, and ladies let down your hair. I got the sound that'll have the people bobbing their heads. Forget the 9 to 5, gonna play it again, cause it won't stop. It's all about the feeling inside. Another path on the journey of this hip-hop ride. If you're down, leave your drama.
Yes. What is up, familia? All my gente out here in the Southwest, Southern New Mexico, all over New Mexico, Arizona, West Texas, wherever you're at. What is popping, baby? I am your host of Off the Grid, Gabriel Garcia. I got a special guest up in the place today, man. My dude, Mr. Young MC, Marvin Young MC. What is up, man? Thank you
What's
for
up?
being here today.
Good, man. How you doing, Gabriel?
I am doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm obviously I'm doing good, man. I'm a happy man right now. Y'all don't understand it. Those people who follow my other podcast, my football podcast, they know the impact you had on me and my music. And anybody who really knows my music, because I've talked about you, I've talked about not just the impact you've had on hip hop, but the impact on me. So they know, you know what I mean? People watching that know me, they know how big this is for me, man. But I really appreciate you coming through, man. How you living? You still out there out in Scottsdale?
Yeah. Still living in Scottsdale. Absolutely.
Oh man, how you liking it out there? It's about time to start getting hot, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's I could do without that, but I deal with it as good as I can. It's a good. It's good and peaceful for me after 20 plus years in LA, growing up in New York. It's a nice change of pace, and on a creative level, it's a good. I find myself being able to do some nice writing out here, so it's all
Oh
good.
yeah. Yeah, we usually head out to Phoenix about twice a year. I love it out there. We're actually headed out in August. There's a spot up there in Scottsdale that we all it doesn't matter what part of Phoenix we're staying on. We got to take the hour drive north to Scottsdale. Butterfields is my spot, man. I love that's like my favorite breakfast spot. Anybody that here in Las Cruces, man, they're like, "Oh, we're going to Phoenix this weekend." I'm like, I'm gonna tell you where to go eat, man. So
That's
yeah,
right.
man, dig it, man. So let's get started with this, man. Now you mentioned about going coming from New York out to LA, but you were actually born in London, am I right?
Yeah, I was born and played in a town called Neasden, north of London. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, and so now you came over to New York when you were young. You were out of was it? Get me right. You were
Queens.
out near Hollis in Queens, right?
Yeah. But I was on the like Queens Village near the border of
Oh,
Hollis. So um Run DMC and them were probably about five blocks from the house, something like that.
okay.
And you know what I mean? It was just it was different. It was different in terms of how hip hop was like I guess the best way to put it is like the reason I don't curse in my music is because we were trying to make music that would get on the radio but when I started, hip hop wasn't on the radio. Rapper's Delight was still a couple years away from coming out, but we always felt that okay, if someone likes our stuff and wants to put it on the radio, we don't want to give them an excuse not to put it on the radio. And I just grew up in that mindset, and I've just kind of taken that literally through 50 years of doing it, or at least I'm sorry, through 40 plus years of doing it, because it's really 50 years of hip hop. But I've been at this since the late 70s.
Well, you definitely are one of the guys who really just kind of kicked the door down, man, in terms of the commercially what when hip hop became you were actually I want to say I like to credit you and Hammer as the guys who kind of kicked that door down from taking hip hop to what it was, kind of underground at the time. I know that wasn't really a term back then for hip hop, but putting it worldwide, to a mainstream audience. Um,
Yeah,
what are
I
your
mean,
thoughts on that?
no, I mean it was like that when I came out. The idea. I mean, look, one of the big things with Rappers Delight, you would hear hip hop stuff on AM radio. You would hear it on college stations, on quote unquote underground stations. You would not hear it on FM stations. So the fact that you could hear a hip hop record on an FM station with you could hear the like the hi hats clearly. that was a big deal. That's 1980, and that was a big deal. I'm 13 years old, and I'm like, that's cool. I want to do that. So to see that growth and to see the music move, I won a Grammy. My Grammy was the first one televised. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's
Yeah.
something that it means a lot. It just means a lot to be part of that.
Now, let me ask you, man, that Grammy acceptance, what was the
Yes.
deal with Flavor Flav, man? Was that just so random, or what was the deal
It
with that?
was random. I appreciate it because now looking back on it, because the logic was that the Grammys weren't going to recognize some group as political as Public Enemy, but within the coming years they would. At least in my eyes, I'd see that it became a lot more open as opposed to like just a nomination just to say that they nominated somebody. But Flavor, in all fairness, we're friends, and he's told me that he got a lot of heat for that.
Oh,
And
wow.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, as
So
somebody who watched it as a fan, and even when I go back and watch it now, it looked to me like it was, one of your peers just showing you love, man. And
yeah,
it
yeah.
seemed like he was genuinely excited for you.
Yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme, on a personal level, yes, absolutely, yes, yeah.
That's dope, man.
So
That's dope.
I'm, looking back on it, it's cool because I mean, the whole thing is an iconic moment, and
Yeah.
ironically, I got a lot of love, and I don't necessarily say doors were open, but I had a lot of people reach out to me that I didn't even know were watching, complimenting me on how I handled the situation, and I'm 23, 22, 23 at the time, so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
meant a lot.
Yeah, you saw a lot of success at a young age, and I believe I remember in your acceptance speech, you talking about that it was a dream, but you didn't expect it to happen so fast.
Yeah.
Life was coming at you fast, man, and I know when was it that you actually went out to LA? Was it when you enrolled at USC?
All right. So I enrolled in at USC in 1985, right? So it would have been the fall of 85 that I enrolled. I got signed to Delicious Vinyl in the fall of 87. So I'm going into my junior year. I let them know, and My Name is Young came out that fall and winter. Know How came out that next summer, and then Bust a Move came out in 89. So it was my senior year when Bust a Move came out, and then all those things started cracking.
Well, I know the crazy thing was that Bust a Move actually, if correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the last single dropped off of the album, off of Stone Cold Rhyming. Am I right?
Well, principal's office afterwards, and
Oh, you're right. You're
I
right.
guess
You're
they
right.
had I Come Off, and then ironically pick up the pace. Um, but there were local singles. I mean, I let them know when My Name is Young was wild. It was independent, and then Island picked up Delicious, and then they made I Let Them Know remix.
Okay.
And Know How came out as a single, and then Bust the Move came out after that.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. And you mentioned principal's office, and I just remember I tell you, man, I turned on people to your music, even back my nephews, early in the late 2000s. I had my nephew and his friends over, they're in high school and they're sitting there bumping principal's office, man, because it was just your ability to tell the story, I think, was something that you still have. Your music that stands now. And you talked about keeping it clean, keeping your music clean. And a lot of people notice that with me, and I attribute that to you as well. I've told you we've had the discussion about the impact you've had on me as an artist and a
Thank you, man.
songwriter, and I've been the same way. It's weird because when I do my music, I do not curse in my music. If I have people feature on it, I make sure to mention that. I'm like, look, man, your thing is cool, and I listen to it. Don't get me wrong.
Right,
I'm gonna
right.
listen to Wu Tang and NWA and stuff.
I listen
It's
to
just
no,
something I
that's
don't
the
do.
funny thing. I listen to everybody, dude. I have no problems with what anybody else does, but it's like when people talk about keeping it real, if I
Yeah,
would have changed my name, if I would have started cursing in the music, if I was to start talking about, heavy topics that I didn't really address before at this age, or even like, 15, 20 years after I was out, that wouldn't be keeping it real to me. Like I
yeah,
established myself as an artist doing those things. So
gotcha.
there's a certain approach I have when I make my music and how I craft things. And I want to make sure that I still have that. And whatever fan base I have and whatever, if they're listening to something in 2024, they could go back as far as 87 and 88 and hear something very similar. you know, and
Respect.
hear a
Respect.
consistency with a thread that goes right through it. That's a big deal to me because
Yeah.
if I was in any other business, you know, this is when they put you in the office and give you the gold watches and give you the, you know, the notoriety for having that level of consistency at a high level in your game. That's what I want to do. So the whole world has changed around me, track wise, everything, and you know, and I'm still feel like I'm really consistent with what I do, and it feels good about it. Did you have a chance to listen to the email I just sent with the song with
I
Loose?
did. I did. I
Yeah,
did. And then the one
that's
you
literally
sent
coming
me,
out
the
in the
one you
next few
sent me a
weeks.
few days too, a few days
Yeah, yeah,
ago,
yeah.
was it Give Me a
Let me get
Mic?
a mic. Yeah.
Yeah, let me get a mic. Oh man, I was actually rolling up to work when you sent me that, and I said, "Oh, I ain't going in yet, man." And I cranked up my radio, threw it on, and I was just vibing, man. I dig it. I dig it because, like you said, like you're what you do, you've never changed. I mean, you've been able because for some reason, what you do, your style, your wordplay, which is, in my opinion, you are one of the top guys ever, and so underappreciated with your wordplay, man. Like I let them know in my opinion, the wordplay you used in that song, it's a collection of some of the best metaphors I have ever heard in hip hop, even still to this day.
If you pause right there, literally the last show that I did, and I want to say it was the 16th of May. So we're at June 1st now, or June. I don't, you know.
Yeah,
So this is literally about literally 2 weeks ago. I did a show in Memphis at a big barbecue festival. Go through my whole new set. I perform Loose. I do Know How. I do Bust a Move. I do a song called That's Right. I do all the good stuff a song called Nocturnal, which is my favorite to perform. I do all my new stuff, all my good stuff, all my good stuff on my set. And a guy standing at the side of the stage afterwards calls me over and he says, Young, I got to tell you, I let him know it was a banger in Memphis. He said it was a banger in Memphis when it came out, and we got to be talking about
oh wow.
87, 88. You know what I mean? He's like that. He said, there's some parties I still play that and that rocks. That was a shock to me. You know what I mean? So to hear you say that in terms about I let him know, I mean, I was a kid, so I did the best I could, and I know that I feel like I've gotten better with my wordplay and all that. Going back and listening to it, there's so many time references in it that you know, as you age, you feel like it's gotten dated or whatever. You know, so unless
Yeah,
someone really
yeah,
recalls it for you, unless somebody recalls it for you, you just say, okay, that's the thing I did during that time. You know, but hearing that and
right.
hearing you say that,
Yeah,
makes me reconsider. And one last thing, at principal's office, I don't perform because I was old for that record when I made that record. You know, I'm making a record about being a kid in junior high or high school, and I'm in you know my 20s when I made the record.
right.
So you put 35 years on top of that, then it's just like, oh my, you know, that's the kind of thing where you get on stage and you feel like, okay, this is a job. If they really want me to do this record that makes me act like I'm 15 years old and I'm in my 50s, this feels like a job. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm slowly, you know, evolving my mindset around that. But that's that, you know, I haven't performed that record on stage in decades.
Wow. Okay. Now, yeah, I did get loose, and I when you sent it to me earlier, I was just
Mhm.
getting ready to come up in here, so I threw it up on my phone, listening to it. Man, this is another one that I'm like, okay, I'm definitely gonna be listening to this when you
Thank
put
you,
that
man.
out, man. And I dig that. Like you still got that whole mentality that an artist should, like you said, when you're performing. You're doing these new songs, man. You know, you're trying to get these crowd reactions. Let's see how the crowd is feeling this, and you have had so much from, like, we're talking about Stone Cold rhyming up until now. I mean, your catalog of music, I can probably go through every one of your albums and I can name you at least what to me is a classic, is a song where you're whether it's your wordplay or your metaphors or whatever it is you're doing on the track, because you're lyrically you're just it's hard to top what you do because your words are clever, and
Thank
the
you, man.
ability to be able to do all this without cursing. I always tell people, when you can put out a banger and you can write something that is just lyrically so good without one curse word in it, considering what hip hop has become in some areas, I mean, it's impressive. It's impressive. And the fact that you still stick with that, man, I respect that a lot. I
Thank you, man.
respect that a lot, man.
Thank
So,
you, dude.
I mean, we're talking about hip hop, and when did you actually fall in love with hip hop? What are some of your influences?
Wow. Okay, that's twofold. Musically, my influences came from my dad's record collection. and
Okay.
he's Jamaican background, so he had the Bob Marley and had the Peter Tosh and the Jamaican record influences, and then that got me into Yellow Man and some of the other toasting and dance hall and that kind of stuff, and then um he'd also have the Eagles and that, so that kind of widened my musical kind of view. Then I literally had a friend, Jeffrey Taylor, born Grandmaster Key, that lived probably 2 blocks away, that had a DJ set up in his basement. And the first time I rhymed over, I think it was either Two Walk This Ways or Two Good Times or Last Night Changed It All or something like that, back and forth. And I rhymed over that in his basement. And that would have been 1978.
Oh wow.
1977 to
Wow.
1978. So then I had a love for that, and then kept going, kept going. I started DJing in my mid teens. Actually, DJed my prom. Went out to LA to go to school, but I was always rapping. Had 16s. I wasn't a great songwriter, but I could write my 16s. So if you listen to that, people say how consider Stone Cold Rhyme my best album. Most of the songs on that album is me spitting the 16 and then just throwing the title at the end of the 16. So I literally would finish the last rhyme of the verse. It would pretty much have nothing to do with what the song title was, and then I would say the song title, and then music would come in and like, oh, it's a song. So Bust the Move, I changed that obviously. Um, Bust the Move, Principal's Office, I Come Off, Know How. Basically the singles. Other than I Let Them Know and My Name Is Young. I Let Them Know and My Name Is Young is like, that's me just putting my 16s together and just saying how great of a rapper I am and throwing a title in. And then
Yeah.
started slowly becoming a songwriter on that. And then after that, was the songwriting. And during that time is when I helped write for Tone Loc, and I came up with Wild Thing, the original verses for Wild Thing, original verses for Funky Cole Medina, and little trivia is that there was a third record that was supposed to be called Showtime that was going to be about the Lakers, and then that never
Oh.
materialized. So I'd written something, and then the label gave it to the label, but the label never put it out.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Never knew about that, man. That's
yeah,
crazy. And a
yeah.
lot of people never really understand the hand that you had in Funky Cole Medina and Wild Thing, because like Bust a Move, those are songs that still get a lot of love, whether it's in movies and entertainment, television or on the radio. I'm still hearing them. But so a lot of people just don't understand. Like back, like here in New Mexico, I got to tell you, man, back then we didn't have any hip hop stations out here. We had to basically go off of MTV, and there's a station 45 minutes from here in El Paso called Power 102 at the time, and they would play
Right,
some stuff when you can get it here. Other
right.
than that, we were getting a little bit of hip hop on the radio here and there, but it was one of those where it was like a top 40 station. So
Hmm.
we didn't have internet, obviously, so people had these little rumors about, there was obviously some kind of tie to you and Tone Loc. But I remember as when I was younger, everybody was like, "Oh, yo, yeah, yeah. Didn't you know, man? Those dudes are brothers, man. They're half brothers. They're half
Okay,
brothers."
this is what happens. At least from what I remember, the during my Grammy acceptance speech, I was in such it was so euphoric. I want to say it was either the Grammy, or it might have been the American Music Award because that one was first. But one of the speeches, I said, I want to thank my brother Tone Loc. Black euphemism, literally, that's what I want to say. And then everybody ran with that we were kin. He had to
Okay,
deny it. I had to deny it. We're close like brothers. I just got married, and
I saw
he
that.
came out to the wedding, and he literally thanked me. He literally was giving me like love repeatedly, where people were noticing like, oh man, that's a moment right there. And like that's the closest person to me in the music business, and closer than a lot of my family, to be honest. And that's my guy, but he is not my family.
Gotcha, gotcha. And that's just funny, man. Because if it was like the internet back then, people would have been running with that. You know what
For
I mean?
sure.
They would have been talking about how you guys are family. But hey, by the way, yes, you mentioned getting married. Congratulations. I know you
Thank you, man.
recently got married, and I remember Rock the Bells was reporting on it, and it was like, man, it was kind of like a little bit of an all-star thing. You had, I think, if I was reading right, Freedom Williams was out there from CNC
Oh
Music
yeah, no
Factory.
freedom. I
Um,
look. I've been touring hard for the last really 6, 7 years on this I Love the 90s tour. So I'm seeing the guys that I tour with more than I'm seeing my local friends and more than I'm seeing a lot, a lot of family. So I naturally sent invites out to a lot of people. So I didn't do that to have famous people at my wedding. I did it to have friends at my wedding.
Right.
And then a lot of
Right.
famous people showed up.
Yeah.
So the one thing I did at Montel Jordan did the
Yeah.
ceremony, and I had friends tell me that was one of the best ceremonies they'd ever seen.
That's
Tone
cool,
Loc
man.
was there. DJ M Walk, his DJ was there. Freedom Williams, was there. And all the members of All for One were there.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it was a good look, man. I mean, Rob Bass and his whole crew
Yeah.
came out. Kyle, a lot of people from the road, a lot of local people that I met doing media here in Arizona. It was just a good fun time. Like, you don't want to use the word perfect, but my wedding pretty much turned out perfect.
Dig it,
So
man.
I was happy.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you, man.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And then
Now,
shout out to my wife
oh,
Chantal. So if
yes.
she'll see this, if she don't hear her name, it's like, why? So shout out
Shout
to my
out to
baby Chantal.
Chantel, man. Definitely, definitely, man.
Exactly.
So now, like they say, it always takes that good woman to keep us alive, right? You know what I mean? So let's talk about the impact of Bust a Move for a little bit, man. Obviously iconic. It seems to be immortal. It's a song that it just seems after all this time, we're looking at going on 40 years, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down. And I think at least in my opinion, it seems to me like pop culture, because it's not only what it has become in hip hop, but pop culture, period, seems to have an idea that is hip hop, and it is. It is when they're talking about looking back, but I think it shows you the kind of life that it has when you can put Bust a Move on pretty much at any party. You can put it on in any club. You can put it on any movie, any commercial, any TV show, and people are going to be digging it. They're going to be bobbing their head. Most of us, like me, are going to be singing along with the track. Talk about your thoughts on the impact that it has had, not only on hip hop, but as pop culture and its ability just to remain immortal.
I mean, it's flattering, it's humbling. Um, it's something that I really try to wrap my head around, that I was able to help create something, or that I was able to be part of something that so many people know. So if you say that there's 350, 60, 70 million people in the United States, if you say that number, let's say 360 million people in the United States. If I was to say 200 million people in this country have heard Bust a Move, that would not be a crazy statement.
No,
Have heard
it
it at
wouldn't.
least once. Don't necessarily have to have it, or
Yeah.
whatever, but if they played the song, 200 million people would be like, I've heard that song before. What else could I do that could touch that many people just here? Not to mention worldwide, other places, whether they speak English or not. What could I do? If you say the world's got what, 7, 8 billion people, if I say what, 2 billion have heard of Bust a Move, what could I do? What else in my life could I do to have, let's get 1 or 2 billion people that could touch that many people? So that's the kind of thing that puts it in perspective for me. In
Yeah.
terms of the
Yeah.
pop culture, yeah. In terms of the pop culture aspect of it, I trip when I'm, in certain conversations, I'll see guys that wouldn't necessarily come from a mindset in my day that would say, "Oh, that's a sellout record. That's a crossover pop record." They'll just drop Bust a Move, talk about getting into a dance or doing an action. They'll just drop Bust a Move as just a piece of a piece of culture, or an analogy or something like that. Like it's just natural, like a piece of the vocabulary, no problem. That stuff trips me out.
Yeah.
The TV commercials when William Shatner was doing Priceline and he had a whole all-star band and he did like a spoken word version. That was
Yeah.
wild. So I'm getting these little anecdotal things, and then like when you're dealing with lawyers and accountants and professional people, and they can quote lyrics. These are like grown-ups, quote unquote, and they quote lyrics back to you, or they tell you stories about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that,
I
that to me,
yeah.
on a big level, it's hard to get your head around on a just a a micro level with the people that I'm encountering and the people I see on the road and the stories I get when I'm, talking to people in business. It's humbling, man. It's like it's amazing to be part of it. Having said that, I wouldn't even call it a negative, but just one of the byproducts of that is that I'm 57 right now, and you don't want to walk around saying that the high point of your life that you can't touch
Right.
happened when you were 22.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I want to be able to do different stuff. I want to be able to do stuff that will still impact people. May not have the impact. I mean, the logic that I use is that Bust a Move was a lot of people's first girlfriend when it came to rap. There were
Yeah.
parents that wouldn't let kids listen to it because it would curse a lot and the subject matter, and they wanted to keep their kids from it. But you can listen to that Young MC album. I can tell you at least 10,000 people have come up to me and told me that same story. My parents wouldn't let me listen to rap. They'd let me listen to your first album, or yours was the first album my parents let me get, or the first album they got for me. And even people like, your album is the one that I'll let my kids hear now. So these are stories over decades that I get. And that's another reason why at this point I'm not going to start cursing and changing stuff up just to be, like everybody else.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of people, that being their introduction into hip hop back then, I think that's the reason it kind of helped open the door for the mainstream success that hip hop has been able to enjoy since then. Because what you were doing, you were right on the brink of just getting out of the golden age, in the mid and late 80s of hip hop, and right before I guess kind of gangster rap and everything took over the mainstream. You were right in the middle of that, man, and you were able to just kind of create something, like you said, where people who may not have really been this open to hip hop, it kind of opened the door for them, man. And I tell people all the time, if you were digging the track, I tell friends that, like my nephew, he's into writing and stuff. I tell him, go back and listen to some of Young MC stuff if you want to learn about the writing and the way you're putting your cadences together, your wordplay, everything like that. Learn when you need to breathe. It's I can listen to an album of yours. Like, I love it. Engage the Enzyme is like one of my favorite albums of yours. And that is like a lesson in songwriting, in my
Thank you,
opinion.
man. It's so interesting, Gabriel, because I probably have never, we probably didn't have that discussion, but Engage the Enzyme is my favorite album in terms
Oh,
of where
wow.
I was, in terms of the that's, to me, that was me at the height of my, at least lyrical songwriting, at least until I kicked it up a notch 5 or 6 years later. So it's from 1989 up until Enzyme, which would have been 2002. That would have been my best record lyrically, and in terms of just a whole piece of putting everything together. I made a shift in 2007 with the Relentless and
Mhm.
my God, I'm forgetting my my Adrenaline Flow album. I'm
Adrenaline Flow,
sorry,
yeah.
my
Yeah, I
my
believe that
Adrenaline
was
Flow album.
'07. Yeah.
Yeah, that was '07. So that's when it's so funny. I don't know if you use rhyming dictionaries at all, or if you use rhyming dictionaries or thesaurus. Thesaurus is when you write.
Yeah.
For 20 years, I had it in my head. I can't use that. That'll be cheating. Now this is when, and now AI is making songs for people, but whatever. At that point, I'm like, oh, that'll be cheating. And then I got to a point where it's like, wait, if thesaurus gives me a word that's already in my vocabulary, but it's not in my brain at the moment, and that reading that word on that page triggers, some lines. Or if I look in a rhyming dictionary and I see a word once again that's in my vocabulary but not in my mind at the moment, and that triggers a rhyme scheme, or I can get a whole line out of that, or that can tie in three other ones I already have, or whatever. I'm like, that's going to be better. If you listen to the Enzyme record, which I say is my best record up to that point, which is 2002, and then you go listen to Adrenaline Flow, and especially Relentless, and now the stuff that I'm coming with.
Mhm.
But you can hear I do minimum 4-line couplets with rhyming. Very rarely
Yeah.
after 2007 am I doing, 1 bar rhyme, 2 bar rhyme, and then on the third bar I start with a new rhyming word. It's usually 4 bar and sometimes longer. Nocturnal to me is the best record I've ever written, because I literally have some fours, a couple of eights, and then the last verse is a 16 with the same rhyme scheme, with literally like different syllables, setting the tone for those sweating alone, thinking that your life was just setting the stone. Worry about your sins, you better atone, because I'll be creeping through the night like a predator drone. And I go through that for 16 bars.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I love that. I love that you do that, to be honest, because it's just a whole different level of songwriting when you're doing that. It
it's
gives
so
you
funny.
go ahead.
So
Go
many
ahead.
records that I've made between, the beginning of my career and that. Pretty much Nocturnal is my favorite record to perform, obviously, other than Bust a Move.
Okay.
So now, even in writing Loose, and the second single I'm gonna have called Fun Part that's coming out after that. That'll be later in the summer. But I'm going through 4 and 8, 4 in the 8-bar rhyme schemes, 4-bar rhyme schemes, and just because I remember doing Nocturnal during a sound check, and the kids, they had kids setting up the chairs and making sure everything was all right while the song was going on, right? So I'm watching their faces while I'm doing it, and I get to the third verse of Nocturnal where the rhyme scheme just keeps going, and I saw this kid, he was rocking, listening to it, and the smile on his face when bar 4 went to bar 5 and the rhyme scheme continued. And then bar 8 went to bar 9 and the rhyme scheme continued. By the time I got to bar 12, this kid was beaming. Like, oh, do you hear what he's doing? That's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah. And I gotta be honest, man. I hear this stuff and it's like it reminds me of why I write the way I do, because I try to emulate that. I try to do those, bar schemes like you're talking about in the rhyme and drag it out as long as I can. I've tried to do it with a whole verse sometimes, and that gets a little bit tricky when you're trying to find the words that can rhyme.
And it's tough. Well, that's the thing. That's where the rhyming dictionary comes in. If you open up the rhyming dictionary and you got 30 words with the same rhyme scheme, and the more syllables you put in, the less words you're going to have, or the less phrases you're going to have. But if you have 30, 40, 50 words with the same rhyme scheme, you got a shot at doing a verse with that. If a rhyming dictionary only has 6 words, you're probably not going to find 16. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's part of it. But I take it as somewhat of a challenge, but also I use a guide for it, so I'm not pulling my hair out. Because when I first did Bust a Move, the first 4 lines of Bust a Move rhyme. First 4, and this is 1989. First 4 lines rhyme. Everything is 2 2 2 2 2 after that. When I wrote the song, after I did the first 4 lines, I wanted to keep going, and I wasn't able to. Wasn't using rhyming dictionaries. Wasn't thinking on that level. I'm like, okay, let's do the OK Smarty, and I literally jumped into the OK Smarty, and everything was 2 lines after that.
Yeah, man. There you go. There you go. Rhyme writing 101.
Yep.
Legendary young MC himself. Straight up. Now, talk to me about let's talk about hip hop in the grand scheme of things when it was then to now. Now, obviously, you did In Case is probably one of my favorite songs because you're telling the story of hip hop. And that actually is the song where I mentioned you. My letter to hip hop was inspired by In Case. But Coast to Coast, yes, absolutely, man. Coast to Coast, though, I feel like while it's a lot like that, it's telling your personal story of hip hop. So between those two songs, it kind of, you get, if you're new to kind of hip hop a little bit, you get a little bit of a storytelling between those two songs of your story and what hip hop was then within Case. And then you look at what it is now. Give me your thoughts on how hip hop from then, when you were a teenager, to what you're hearing now, what's going on now. What are your thoughts on all this, man? On how everything's changed?
Look, man. First thing, it's in my opinion, the artists are always innocent. If there's any issue that I'd have, it would be with the industry, because rappers and even people that just want to do this to make a living are only going to do this. They're only going to do the things that'll make money.
Yeah.
So when Bust a Move came out, and I had other guys, rappers come to me and tell me that, oh, my label has kind of pushed me to do a up-tempo song with a girl singing in the hook because of your song. I don't want everybody to sound like me. We had in my day, De La Soul, Public Enemy, myself, NWA, Poor Righteous Teachers, Special Ed, all these different guys going gold or platinum at the same time, sounding totally different. So for me, I'd want everybody to sound different. But as soon as the commercial aspect got into it, you got people, doing stuff not necessarily not necessarily not keeping it real, but basically doing stuff to make the money.
No
If the label said we'll
originality.
pay you for this, then they do it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. The
I
originality got
can't
lost.
necessarily, huh?
The originality got lost at some point.
Well, definitely, because look, you want to be lucrative, you want to make good money doing it. And
Yeah,
my approach has been, um, I like coming up at a time when I could do what I needed to do and go platinum, and NWA could be at the same time and they could go platinum. I like that,
yeah,
you know. So that's the only thing, is like I don't want it to be limited, because I didn't like it when it was limited way back in the day. So I wouldn't want it to be limited to just the stuff that's out right now. Everything's following trends. So that's my thing too. I mean, music now, Bust a Move has 4 16-bar verses and a 16-bar hook. I couldn't put Bust a Move out like it is. I could be the perfect lyrics, the perfect track, perfect everything. I couldn't put it out in its current form today. So knowing that, in the new music I'm creating, instead of having 4 16-bar verses, I think Loose has 2 16s and a 12. I'll have other stuff that'll have a 16, a 12, and an 8, to just get the people into it, get the cadences going, still show my wordplay and all that. But I know that the attention span isn't there for 4
yeah,
verses,
yeah.
and 4 verses, 4 hooks, double hook at the end,
Mm.
16-bar break. The attention span just isn't there. So I'm not going to try and bang my head up against the wall, for something that's pretty much antiquated. I can take my style, my writing technique, my flow, my skills, and put it into the kind of setup, the fabric of what a song is today. And that's the thing that kind of keeps me going while I'm at this age, saying, okay, I'm gonna write stuff, I'm gonna do stuff that'll get people jumping. And also being on tour so much. I mean, we're talking over, since 2015, we're talking at least 500 shows.
Wow,
You know,
wow.
2016, 2016, I want to say I did something like 110 just in that year alone. Some time off for
Wow.
COVID, but since 2015, we're talking probably around 500 shows. But with the I
Now,
Love the 90s tour and stuff that
yeah,
are similar, that's
and I
similar.
was going to
So
ask
I'm
you, are you
going on
still
the road
doing the I
now.
Love '90s tour?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's still going. Things are slowing down now. There's a lot of people canceling tours. I have fewer dates on my show. Then you don't have a lot of artists talking about it, but there are a lot of big tours that people assume. I mean, everybody can't be Taylor Swift. Everybody can't be,
Yeah,
you know what I mean, the biggest artist and do what they want and sell out tickets and sell out arenas in a lot of places. So I'm still on that tour. We're still doing our thing, but Gabriel, what I'm telling you, this is the first time that I've written with the stage in mind. Used to be I'd make a record and I'm like, okay, we'll see how this turns out when I get on stage with it. I literally am thinking of concepts while I'm on stage performing other records. Like, oh, if I had a call and response, I have that little AI character, Disco Teresa, in the song answering me,
hmm,
that kind of thing.
yeah,
I'm like, oh, that would be cool to have a voice like that coming through the speakers, be like a call and response, or be something else for the crowd to get into,
yeah,
and take that
yeah,
to the next level. You know, to me that makes it fun, because I
yeah,
can't approach it the same way I approached it when I'm writing in 87, 88, even 97, 98. I can't approach it the same way. I got to approach it differently.
yeah, yeah. And you're right. Like that's a great example of how things have changed
Hmm.
in hip hop, especially. And like you talked about, the originality, and it's true because back then, you couldn't really sound like somebody else because it was a whole, it was a personal thing with rappers and songwriters back then, that you had to have your own sound, your own
Right.
originality. You couldn't come out, trying to sound like Young MC after he just hit his record, because nobody's going to listen to you. Everybody's going to see it as biting. Oh, you're just trying to sound like this dude. Whereas, like you said, now I see a lot of that where everything just kind of sounds the same, and it's hard for me to
Yeah.
distinguish some artists, other unless you're listening to, of course, guys like J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, and Drake, that obviously have, their kind of own thing. Talk to me about, who are some of the artists, your favorite artists from then to now, Do you still listen to a lot of the hip hop from then, and do you listen to any artists now?
I listen to a lot of hip hop from back then. Obviously, after my era, like late '90s into the 2000s. Um, and I listen to stuff today. So I'm a big Eminem fan from back then. Love what
Yeah,
50 did because he had a different approach lyrically and style. Um, love Drake, J. Cole, Kendrick. Kendrick especially, really, because Kendrick is so unabashedly West Coast. And when
yeah,
I came up, lyricism, you didn't say lyricism and West Coast in the same sentence. West Coast hip hop just had a different vibe to it, and it didn't have the lyrical emphasis that East Coast hip hop did. And Kendrick, Quick did his thing. Exhibit,
yeah,
a lot, corrupt, was an incredible,
yeah.
incredible lyricist West Coast. But what Kendrick has done, and the game, obviously,
Hmm.
the game is an amazing lyricist, and he took it to another level. But what Kendrick has done in terms of him basically carrying the flag for lyricists and coming from the West Coast is something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime.
Yeah, I really feel like Kendrick Lamar has brought such a powerful level of technical writing
Yeah,
that you didn't see a lot in the West Coast, like you're saying. It was pretty standard out on the East Coast, going back to guys like Rakim, who were very technical with their writing. But man, what Kendrick does sometimes with that pen, oh man, I just
yeah,
sometimes I got
no,
to
no,
go back and hear it again, and I'm like, just to get what he's saying. It's
right, no, I
crazy.
hear you,
It's crazy
I hear you. So,
sometimes like
so
that,
for
man.
me, it's interesting because it's like the younger me in my 20s at 1-2 albums in, I'd want to try and recreate everything I heard or try and be able to be better than everybody else I heard, and I had my own identity, but it was more like I'm still on that dopest rapper, in every circumstance, whatever. And now I look at it like there are so many lanes that have been created by artists like Kendrick that
Mhm.
I could never have even imagined in my younger days, that it makes me kind of cherish what I did do, what I did have, the influence I was able to have on someone like you and people that had listened to my music in younger days. It like that puts the battery in my back to say, okay, I'm gonna go forward consistently with the same style and the same approach, that I had from back in the day.
Yeah, and your flow's always been there. You've been able to change with the times. Like when you did What's the Flavor, which is very,
Yeah,
very difficult album to find anywhere now. Like
yeah.
it
Well,
is very difficult.
that Brainstorm. Here's the interesting thing. Brainstorm. I did 2 albums on Capitol, and Brainstorm. They did such a big push on that record. It shipped gold. There
Now
was a
that was
lot of
that was the one
controversy.
with was that the one with That's the Way Love Goes
That's the way it goes to
was
keep it
on
in your
Brainstorm.
pants. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I was.
yeah, yeah.
So that's
Okay.
my second record. So they did such a big push on that, and they did special editions and all this stuff. You don't have as much trouble finding that record. The What's the Flavor record was my follow up, and it was more of a hip hop record, and they wanted me to go harder. They
Yeah.
the first promo release didn't have my name on it. They tried to paint it, and I didn't say my name in the song, so they painted it like I was somebody else on a record label that wasn't Capitol. Um, I had Ali Shaheed from Tribe Called Quest and his
Yes.
sidekick Beetle doing tracks on that. They wanted me to come harder, but I wasn't going to curse, and I was only going to be as much of me as I could. And that was a record they didn't put as much push behind. We got some love. I remember having to go out to, I want to say Cleveland. I was out in Ohio for a while, pushing because that record had really, taken hold there. But in terms of big and nationwide and videos and the like, didn't really get the push on that. And then I left Capitol after that. And then
Okay.
I went and made, Rolling and Get Your Boogie on the independent side, and Rolling was a big record for me. I think
Oh,
in New
that
Mexico,
song goes so hard, man. I love that
West,
song.
yeah, Southwest bang for me. I remember Vegas, I think Arizona to a certain extent. Those records banged, and then that put me on a different trajectory after that.
Ah, got it, man. And I mean, Return of the One Hit Wonder. I can't forget about that one. Why does that one fly under the radar? Why did it fly under the radar? I love that album. Like next to Stone Cold Rhymin' and obviously Engage the Enzyme. That's probably my favorite album behind the other two. Why did that one fly under the radar?
I mean, dude, when you're not, when there's no internet and you don't get a single that charts and you don't get a lot of licenses on it, there's not a lot of light that gets on
Yeah.
the record. So everything goes under the radar to a certain extent until you can get some kind of, some kind of shine that'll get it out of, out into the radar, if you will. And that record really didn't. It, to me, I see the growth of myself as a writer and as a producer, because going from Brainstorm forward, I did the majority of production on all the records that I did. So I'm at the point now, like, you hear the term singer songwriter all the time. You never hear the term rapper songwriter, but that's what I consider myself to be. J. Cole, I guess, would be a contemporary person that does it at a high level and is accepted as such because he's an amazing producer and an amazing lyricist, and he can do whatever he wants. That's competitive in both sides of it, and singing, and so much that he can do. But I approach my songs as a rapper songwriter. I'm not going to hear a beat from a producer and be like, oh, let me go run and write something that inspired a song. That doesn't happen. I hear a hook, I hear a concept, I may hear a bit of a sample, and then I kind of see the track or see the hook and then build out from that. So literally from the original little speck of an idea, I see the wellspring of a whole song. That's how I write. That's how I approach stuff. So it's the songs, aren't coming as fast as I used to do it when I was younger, but
Yeah.
I'm so committed to them when I make them. But like I said, I approach it as a rapper songwriter. So going back to Return of the One Hit Wonder, people, unless those were the days that unless I'm saying that I'm produced by the biggest producer in the world, nobody wants to hear it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was only rap. That's the thing I didn't understand. You could have R&B people, you could have pop, rock, anything else. If it's produced by the band, if it's produced by the act and those other genres, then it's fine. Here's a singer-songwriter. Here's a band that writes for themselves. They made the record. They produced the record. Let's hear it. A rapper, if they don't have, in those days, if they didn't have X, Y, and Z producer, they're like, oh, well, how good could it be if this producer didn't want to jump on it? So,
Yeah. Wow.
at
Yeah.
that point, it's not about, I don't say it's about me. It's about the industry at that point.
Facts. Facts. Straight up, man. And like you talked about the internet, how it's changed everything. And I think how music is now from back then so easily accessible with Spotify and all these apps and YouTube has made it a lot easier for people to hear that music. But at the same time, like you were talking about with the industry just has such a hold on all this stuff. It's so saturated as well that it's hard to get people to listen. Sometimes with my music, I'm like, I know this is a great song. The hard part is getting people to listen. And
Yeah,
the
I
internet
mean,
has just changed all that.
yeah, when I put out Stone Cold Rhyme, and even beforehand, before even CDs, somebody had to have a record player, say they were going to buy the record. If we didn't have a video, they may have artwork, but there was a commitment. Going to the record store, paying that money down. You got a piece of product that you own that you could listen to as many times as you want, but you have to physically, take the needle, put it on the record. Just those actions, each time you did that, you became more and more attached to the artist you're listening to. Now it's literally, you don't even have to go to a musical device. You could just be on your phone, and you don't necessarily have to have headphones. It can be the
Yeah.
speaker coming out of your phone, and you just hit next or hit a playlist, or I like 20 seconds of this and then bounce to the next. I like a minute of this and then bounce to the next thing. There's no cost to commitment. There's no reward for commitment to an artist or to a certain song, and you can literally go through thousands of songs in a month. So if you're literally going from thousands of pieces of work in a month, how much commitment is there to the people that you're listening to?
Yeah.
And then how am I
Yeah.
supposed to expect that person that I was lucky to get, a minute and a half or 2 minutes out of, to say, okay, now I'm gonna take my hard-earned money and pay money for a concert ticket?
Yeah.
That's why you see a lot of the newer kids having trouble, selling tickets on a big level. One, because the tickets are expensive, but two, the experience of getting into it is not as big of a leap as it was back in the day, and there's no such thing as a fan club anymore. So you can't really show your true love of a certain artist,
I
let
agree. And
alone
I yeah.
the guest starring and all that other stuff. I mean, I don't do a lot of features because I once again I approach it like a rapper songwriter. I could see reasons for it, but just my approach is like I like the fact that I can make a whole song soup to nuts, start at the beginning, go to the end, tell a story, have it be consistent, have it line up with the hook. That's development as a songwriter for me. So
Yeah, and I love what you talked about with the loyalty or the commitment to an artist, because I think that's why back then we were so, became such big fans of certain artists. Like you said, like we would go to, down to the local record shop, and you buy an album, and that's all I can afford. So I'm listening to this album over and
right,
over and over again. I'm memorizing it. And that the thing that is lost on this new generation now is, and it's sad to me because I remember now the feeling of the anticipation when you're going and you're getting the album. You remember when they had all the lyrics in it, and you're opening up the cassette, man, and you're listening it to
yeah,
it from track one all the way to the end, and you're reading the lyrics along with it until you memorize them. And it was just such a beautiful way to engage, to become a part of the music. And it was, to
sure,
me, in my opinion, you became a part of the artist, at least for your time when you're listening to it. And I,
yeah,
I
yeah.
really miss that. I really miss that a lot, man.
Well, here's the thing: we take that kid that you were buying one album, listening to it over and over again. That's all you could afford. So there was a commitment you had. You had to be really, and when you bought an album you didn't like, or when you bought an album that didn't turn out to be as good as you hoped it would be, and you spent your allowance on it, that made you think twice. So fast forward to now, you got it where okay, we got the big producer. We have $100,000 budget. We got the big producer. Big producer cost 75 grand to make this one single. We're gonna, do the rest of the record with other little producers and throwaway tracks or whatever. But we'll have an album which features this one big song with this big producer, and we'll put the video out and all that. Then you, as a kid, go to the store, buy the record. You like the big record with the big producer on it that cost them all that money. You love that, but the other 11 tracks, there's nothing distinguishable about it. But they charge the same amount as that album you listened to back in the day to have 5, 6, 7 songs that you like that had lyrics that you could really get into. But then the industry got to the point where it's like, okay, let's get this single with this big producer that we can make a splash on, and then we'll make the money off of selling these albums with these throwaway tracks, and
Or
then
like
people
like like a term
stop
that I
buying
I
albums.
always got from you, a term I always got from you was the album fillers.
Yeah,
Those basically that's what it was. You throw it on, it's an album filler. And I always love how you always talked about, like, in your music, you'll throw it into your lyrics. Don't hit me with no album fillers, because every
yeah.
song is going, I believe, like, your songwriting, you come off to me as this: every song that I'm writing in my head, it's got to be a hit. I got to put everything into it.
I look at it like this. I'm getting to the point where I have more years behind me than I have ahead of me in terms of how much music I'm doing. How much longer I'm going to do music. But since I got to like 15, 20 years in, now that I'm 37, 37 years in, but when I got to 15 years in, I said, okay, every song I do, I have to act like this could be the last song that someone hears from me. So every song I'm making, it could be a license, they could be put in an educational program, which I've had happen. You know, I want this set of lyrics and this representation of me to be good enough where if that's the only thing they can say, okay, that kid's got quality. That music has quality. So every song I write has to be at that level or I'm not happy. I never
Yeah.
go into a record saying, okay, I got the single, let me just make up the rest of it. I try and make the best record I possibly can and try and do that 10, 11, 12 times, and then let the audience decide what they like best, and what they don't like as much. And that's made me feel good because someone can go back through my catalog and guaranteed they'll look, a lot of people look at me like a lot of other artists that would have one big hit or two big hits, and then the rest of the records are like mindless throwaways. And then you could pick up any album of mine and hear something and say, wow, that was better than I thought. I get on stage now and I'm performing a lot of that older stuff, and people are amazed at how good it is. And I'm like, that's why I made it. I performed it
Yeah.
over decades to know that this not it's not Bust a Move, but it's another song that I like just as much to perform on stage, and I'm gonna give it to you right now. And I get really positive response from that.
Facts, man. Facts. Respect. I can dig that. Now, Nah, before I know we've been on for a while, so but I wanted to touch on something. Let's flip away from the music for a bit. Justice Served. Was
Mm,
your directorial debut? Am I correct?
yeah,
For
yes.
okay, so and you've been in movies. This movie now. Do you plan on sticking with movies going forward? Is it something that you're still dabbling in right now?
Um, to be honest, that the whole experience of doing Justice Served was like a bucket list thing for me. I wanted to be able
Okay.
to, because I'd written scripts for a long time. I took my writing to that next level to try and do something visual. But to see what the, what the film business has become with the streaming and the less the reduced emphasis on theatrical releases and that kind of thing. Um, I like the fact that I did that and I was able to take, for instance, in that movie, Lance Henriksen is in that movie, and directing him. The second day I was behind the camera, saying action. I'm directing Lance Henriksen, and I literally harken back to when Dr. Dre produced me for All in the Same Gang, and I'm doing
Okay.
my verse, and I ended my verse a certain way, and he asked me to change it so that I could fit in. I could fit in with other artists coming behind me because I thought that my verse is definitely going to lead into a hook. You can't give me 16 and I don't come into a hook. But he gave me 16 and had me build the 16 in a way where I can have another artist jump behind me. But instead of telling me he's going to have other artists jump behind me, he just says, "Can you end it like this?" And I did it. It got my purpose, got his purposes done, and made me feel like I was, easy to work with, and I got my ideas out, and it fit in the record and the long version, especially just fine. And I was not all of us got on the single version, but 8 of my 16 got on the single version. So I
Yeah.
kept that in the back of my mind, like this is how the greatest people that do this do their thing. So when I got up and I'm directing, it wasn't about, oh, Young MC's directing now. It's like these are the people that I'm working with. Let me try and make the experience. I was very much an actor's director. I'm like, let me try and make the experience as good for them as possible, and let me grow out of it as a creator, songwriter. I mean, script writer, but also songwriter. Just in terms of creating a story, it was a very interesting experience, and I took a lot of that into the stuff that I've made musically since then.
Now, wait, have you always just naturally been a great storyteller? Because that's one thing that you have always done so well in your music, even to this day.
Well, I heard a quote the other day that a sign of intelligence is the ability to take something very complicated and be able to explain it to someone that doesn't understand the full concept, or make it something you could tell a third grader or a fifth grader. And that in being able to explain it to someone that doesn't understand it as well as you do, you're showing your total knowledge of the topic. So I try and take that with anything that I'm explaining. I don't make any assumptions that anybody knows a whole bunch about what I'm talking about. I'm presenting it as if it's brand new, but I want to make it appealing. And that's always been my approach.
Dig it, man. Dig it. I've always tried to learn from you in the storytelling. For my part at least, sometimes I look to country music because I always feel country is so good
Yeah.
at storytelling as well. And
and, and, and
it's
old school hip hop too. Old school hip
yeah,
hop too. Like,
yeah,
your problems of the world, and some of that stuff where guys are tackling, where groups are tackling topics, especially the group ones are very interesting because they would write their own verses. So they would write their own 8 bars or 4 bars or whatever. But you would see the approaches that they would have to the same topic, and that really would open my mind up to, like, okay, I can approach it like this rapper in the group did, or that rapper in the group did, or look at how many different approaches came to the same topic, but they came from 4 or 5 different human beings. That opened up a lot for me in terms of being able to tell stories.
yeah. The old school storytelling was always there. The
Mhm.
message from Grandmaster Flash comes up
Sure.
with Melly Mel, the picture he painted of New York
Yeah.
at the time. So it's always been a big part of hip hop, and I think it always will be. And you have been one of the best to do it, in my opinion, man. So I'll always take that to the grave. Now, before I let you go, man, there's I wanted to touch on this earlier. We just got into the conversation, and it's going back to your days at USC when you got signed. Just for my viewers and listeners, quickly tell the quick story of how you got signed, because I understand it, man. You were in your dorm rooms when they got the
Yeah.
contract to you, right?
Yeah, it was after sophomore year, so this would have been spring of '87. I go back to New York, and I'm working with a guy I knew that worked in a record store named Rock and Soul. Rock and Soul was on 36th Street, 7th Avenue. That was where I went after school to get all my records as a DJ, got all the new stuff. And there was a guy in that store that said he had a connection to a record company. I believe it was called Get Busy Records. So I spent the summer in New York recording demos and trying to get signed to that label. Nothing ever happened with that. But the dude from the record store said, I know some guys in LA. They're starting up a label. It's called Delicious Vinyl. He sent the demos to them, and then they called me up, and I literally rapped over the phone. I want to say 2 verses from "I Let Her Know" and a verse from "My Name Is Young" because I just had 16s with no hooks. So I rapped those three verses, 3 or 4 verses for them over the phone, and within a couple weeks, really within a week, they had sent me a contract. So at that time, I'm in the student senate at USC, representing the uh, the student apartments, the campus apartments, and the student senate basically had students that represented different places. So they would represent the dorms, they would represent the apartments, they would represent off campus, they represent the law school, the business school. So I went to the
Wow.
law school representative with my contract and asked him if he could look it over. He
Nice.
wasn't a lawyer, but I didn't have a lawyer. He looked it over. You know what I mean? There's stuff both of us missed at that point, but that's where I was. And
All
then and
right,
then
man.
sign that contract, and then made Stone Cold Ramen, wrote for Tone Loc, and the rest is pretty much history.
Yes, it is, man. Yes, it is. And so once again, man, thank you so much for doing this, for being here today, man. You have no idea how much it means to me, obviously, but also for everybody out here, man, people that maybe aren't familiar with your work or what's been going on with you, since then. Now we get a little bit to tell them your story, man. So I appreciate you so much for joining me here on Off the Grid, man. Before I go, is there anything you've got going on? Maybe you've got some things going on that you want people to check out.
Well, I'm definitely going to be touring on the I Love the '90s tour and other touring opportunities. And that song "Loose," man, I worked on that song for a couple of years. Bringing new technologies into it. The video, I'm working with graphics and AI companies, putting that together. So by mid June at the latest, there's a good chance you could be hearing it on mix shows even before then. But by the second week of June, we're going to be popping with that, and then hopefully later in the summer we're going to come with more singles, and I'm going to be touring and making it happen, man. So that's really been what I've been focused on for the last several months, if not years, in terms of creating the music. The track for Loose literally took me 2 years. It's the longest that I've
Wow.
taken to make a song because every aspect of it. Oh, let me do this with the beat. Oh, let me do this, lyric flow. Let me mess with the 808s. What about the rhyme cadence? Let me put the AI voice in this certain place. Let me put this interlude in. Let me get it, to a certain length that's short enough for radio today. All of those things were thought out. All that now it may
Wow.
hit you in just 3 minutes and be done, but all
Yeah.
of those things were thought out over a long period of time, and I think it just came out amazing.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. It's a big change from writing Bust a Move in 90 minutes, right? To spending
Yeah, yeah.
2 years on a song where you completely put it together from the ground up, the beat, everything. Much respect to you, man. I definitely dig that. Now, your music, it's available everywhere. Um, I just want to make sure you do get you get your royalties off Spotify, all that, right? Because if somebody else getting it, man, then then I got to
I
make
mean, no,
sure
I mean,
that I'm pointing people in the right
we're,
direction.
we're at the point now we finally got a chance to put all the music together on one page. So we're in the
Okay.
process of doing all that. But Gabriel, I have to say I appreciate you so much for not only in this interview, but when we talk, you treat Engage the Enzyme, Adrenaline Flow, Ain't Going Out Like That, One Hit Wonder, Relentless, Rolling, Get Your Boogie. You treat all of that in the same way that you would treat Bust a Move. And you're one of the few people that I talk to that literally have taken the time not only to listen to, but to appreciate my entire catalog. So it's like I've
Thank you.
written well over 200 songs, by myself, with me as an artist, or at least me as a guest artist or whatever. But I would say many dozens of me as an artist with my album, my catalog, and you take the time to really emphasize your love for that, and that really means a lot to me, man.
Hey, all right. It means a lot to me also that when I reached out to you some years ago, and then we met up in Albuquerque, and we sat there pre-show, and you kicked a lot of game to me, and I took a lot of that. I remember you responding to me, telling about how my sound has changed a little bit and it's improved, and I work on that. I do. I'm working on something right now. Also, that when I listen to my stuff, I'm like, I've kind of got that perfectionist ears that all songwriters have, like you talked about, where every little thing just has to be on point. You have to make sure that this is the best that you can get it, and I take that from you. And also, man, you opened up your whole catalog to me, and I still, we still listening to it, man. I still got it, got it up when I'm listening in the car, man. And I've turned my nephew Derek on. Shout out to my nephew Derek. He's also a fan of yours. And
Thank
when
you.
I told him I was going to be doing this, he was like, man, he was just geeking out about it, man. So thank you so much for everything and for inspiring me, not just me, but everybody else, man, that has followed in your footsteps, for opening the door. You've inspired the artist in me, not just as a fan, but as a music lover, as a hip hop lover, period, from somebody who comes from a music family. My respect for you is just, it's up there, man. So thank you so
Thank you,
much
man.
for providing me with the influence that you have, man. And we're gonna keep listening, bro. We're gonna keep listening. And y'all can go on there and be sure to log on to his website, youngmc.com. Now, do you update this with your tour schedule?
We have some. I mean, I'm of the age where it was like, why am I going to tell people exactly where I'm going to be away from my home, and
Yeah.
just give them a list of dates? That's always
I
been
hear
my
you.
thought with it. But we're on Instagram at Young MC 89, Facebook Young MC 89, TikTok at official Young MC. You'll see me online, and the videos coming for Loose, so that we're gonna do a
Okay.
splash with that. So you know, just keeping it moving, man. I'm
There we
gonna
go.
keep doing it because it's still fun.
Young man moving, man. Young man
Thank
moving,
you,
like
man.
you said in your own words, man. So, all right. So, everybody out there, also, if you need to contact me here at Off the Grid, you can hit me at offthegrid.lc@outlook.com. Shoot me with some of your ideas. Maybe somebody y'all want to see on the show, and I will get back to each and every one of you guys. And also, Off the Grid, y'all will be available on Spotify. This episode, if you're watching on YouTube, will be available on Spotify shortly after, man. So, thank you so much to everybody who's watching this, who's listening. And I hope that if you're an artist and you're listening to your favorite rapper on the radio right now, current day rapper, you can thank this man right here for that, because he is one of the reasons that hip hop has become so big on the radio, commercially,
Thank you, man.
pop culture, everything, man. So from the music lovers, man, we humbly say thank you, bro, and I appreciate you for being here today, man. Definitely, definitely. And if you make it out here to El Paso or Albuquerque for the '90s tour, we'll,
So
we'll
I'll
try
let you
we'll
know.
try and get out there. Yeah, let
Absolutely,
me
I'll
know.
hit you up.
Let me know. We'll make the trip, man. Go and check you out, and of course support and just enjoy the music, man. So, anything else you want to say to anybody out there before I let you go?
Just keep now, hey man. If you're into this music and you're doing this music, just keep grinding, keep doing your thing. And if you're just listening to it, I appreciate your ears, and I'm gonna keep giving you the consistent stuff I've always given you.
There it is. There it is. I like to close out every one of my podcast shows with a positive message, and in this case, man, it's based on what we've gathered from you today. Uh, I like to say greatness is measured by your legacy. I always tell people it's not measured by your fame or stuff like that. It's by the impact you have on those that come after you, and your ability to keep building on it, keep doing it, and keep being great. And that's something you have done. So y'all just take that, man. Take this interview for what it is. Learn from it. Whether you're a songwriter or whatever you're doing in your everyday life, your greatness is going to be measured by your legacy, and your legacy can go as long as you got some breath in your lungs, man. Young MC is just another great example of that, man. So y'all take that and you run with it. You run with it. So
Thank you,
I am
Gabriel.
Gabriel. You got it, man. Thank you. Thank you. So I am Gabriel Garcia. This is Marvin Young MC, man, from the desert. Both of us out here in the desert. It's off the
Hot.
grid, baby. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is, man. And we gonna keep it hot on the airwaves, y'all. Y'all stay tuned. Follow my social medias, and I'll keep you posted on who I got coming on the next episode of Off the Grid. I am Gabriel Garcia. This is Marvin Young MC, and we're off the grid, baby. We're gonna catch you all on the flip side, all right?
If you're down, leave your drama behind and let's roll. The world is getting lost in my feel-good flow. Oh! Need that music medication, that's my specialty though. 5, 7.